The chime of a turn signal just now, a quick, rhythmic blink, brought it all back, oddly enough. It sounded exactly like the indicator in that old sedan I used to drive. I was working as a rideshare driver during the summer after college, trying to save up for, well, it doesn't matter what for now. It was late July, humid even for that time of year, and I mostly picked people up from the airport. The airport run ended. A standard fare to a hotel near the convention center. I pulled into the pickup lane a few minutes early, just to stretch my legs. It was still thick with humidity, that late summer air that clings to you. Another request popped up on the app. Ward, same area. Okay. He got in the back, which is fine. Some people prefer that. Quiet guy, early 30s, wearing a baseball cap pulled low. He didn't say much, just gave me the address. A residential street, not far from where I just dropped someone off. Then he started it. The turn signal on, off, exactly, like the last guy. It wasn't the doing of it. Not really. It was the precision, the rhythm. It wasn't random. It was a deliberate pulse. I glanced in the rearview mirror, trying to catch his eye, see if it was some kind of joke. He was staring straight ahead, hands clasped in his lap. I tried to ignore it. Put on some classic rock, turned the volume up a notch. But the click-click of the signal was still there, cutting through the music. It reminded me of my old Corolla, the one I traded in because the turn signal switch kept sticking. I'd have to get that looked at. Maybe it was a common problem. "Everything all right back there?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Perfectly fine," he said, his voice flat. And then, almost as an afterthought, Could you turn off the music for a moment?" I did. The click-click of the signal filled the car. He shifted in his seat. "Could you slow down a little?" He didn't ask. Exactly. It was a statement delivered with a strange weight. It felt less like a request and more like an instruction. I took the long way around, figuring if I just didn't go back to that neighborhood, it would be fine, stupid. I know. Like avoiding a pothole makes it disappear. But I didn't want to see him again. Not after the way he'd looked at me when I'd asked if everything was all right. Just flat, like he wasn't really registering the question. Then the app pinged. Same address, same passenger. Ward, I almost canceled. I seriously considered it. But the rating thing, and I needed the fares. I told myself it was just a coincidence. People live in houses. He lived in a house on that street. He didn't say anything when I pulled up. Just got in. Same baseball cap pulled low. The signal. He started it again, almost immediately. Click, click. Not frantic, not angry, just steady, like a metronome. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the traffic, but it was messing with me. I glanced in the rearview mirror. He was watching me, not staring exactly, just observing. It felt like he was cataloging my reactions. "Is there a specific route you'd prefer?" I asked, trying to sound normal. "Just the fastest," he said, his voice still quiet. "Then, you used to have a faulty turn signal, didn't you, on your old car?" I nearly swerved. How did he know that? I hadn't mentioned it to anyone. I'd gotten rid of that car months ago. Yeah, it was annoying. "It had a rhythm," he said, and the click-click of his own signal sped up, mirroring the broken one I remembered so well. It wasn't a coincidence. He'd been paying attention before. Maybe he was some kind of mechanic, had seen my car around. It was a long shot, but it was better than the alternative. I didn't pull over. Not right away. I just floored it. I took the next right, then another, trying to lose him on side streets. It was Saturday afternoon, so traffic wasn't terrible, but it was enough to make things unpredictable. I glanced in the rear view, expecting to see his car right behind me, but nothing, just normal cars. Still, I kept going, weaving around, until I was pretty sure I'd shaken him. I pulled into the parking lot of a diner, a real greasy spoon place I sometimes grabbed breakfast at. I needed to catch my breath. That's when I saw him, standing by the entrance, leaning against the brick, hands in his pockets, just watching. He hadn't followed me directly. He'd anticipated where I'd go. That's when the real fear hit. This wasn't random. He started walking toward my car as I fumbled with the door handle, trying to lock it. It jammed. Of course it jammed. He was close enough now I could see the glint of something metallic in his hand. Not a gun, I told myself. It couldn't be, but the shape, it was too realistic. Then he spoke, calm as anything. "Ward," he said, using my name, "just wanted to talk." I didn't answer. I put the car in drive, tires squealing as I lurched forward, narrowly missing a parked pickup truck. I didn't look back. I drove straight to the police station, heart hammering. They took my statement. A young officer named Kay mostly nodded and typed. I told them about the clicking, the questions, the toy. They seemed skeptical, kept asking if I was sure it wasn't a real weapon. I was sure it looked like a toy, but it was the way he knew things, the way he'd been watching. It had to be some kind of elaborate prank, some weird, messed up way to get attention. Maybe he was a YouTuber filming a social experiment. It felt contained, like he just wanted a reaction. I really thought that. I drove straight to my sister May. Her place as well, it's a little remote. Up in the hills, a long driveway, all that. I figured if anyone would believe me, it would be her. She's a lawyer, practical, doesn't freak out. I barely made it through the story without shaking, the clicking, the questions, the way he just knew about the old Corolla and that damn fuel pump. I kept replaying it, trying to find a logical explanation. Maybe he'd worked at a garage, seen the car come in for repairs. It was a common enough problem. May listened, asked questions, but she was distant. She kept looking at her computer, typing something. Finally, she said she'd run a check on the license plate I'd given Kay, said she had some access. It took 10 minutes. When she turned back to me, her face was tight. "That plate doesn't match the description you gave, or any vehicle registered to a ward, or anyone with that name, actually." I felt my stomach drop. What? But I saw it. The plate was clear as day. May scrolled through something on her screen. The vehicle linked to that plate is a delivery van, owned by a catering company based in Sergio's district. They do events for corporate retreats, a lot of team-building exercises. Team building. That didn't fit. He wasn't trying to build my team. He was dismantling me piece by piece. It was unsettling. I started thinking maybe this wasn't random. Maybe it was about someone I'd worked with, a disgruntled client, a former colleague, something professional, something I'd forgotten. But the Corolla, the clicking that didn't feel like work, it felt personal. It's funny, the things you forget, or maybe not funny. I remember the smell of May's kitchen, cinnamon, always cinnamon. She baked when she was stressed. She was definitely stressed then. I kept replaying the whole thing, trying to make it make sense. The van, the guy, the questions, it felt like a setup, but for what? I thought maybe Sergio was involved. He'd been restructuring things at work, and layoffs were happening. Maybe someone thought I had information. It felt corporate. It felt cold. I went back to driving, of course. It was how I paid the bills after 1 week. I started taking only short trips. Downtown mostly. I avoided anything that looked like it led out into the county. Then the requests started. Not like the first time, not directly, just odd requests. "Can you go through the drive-thru? Could you stop and get me a specific brand of water?" Little things. Then a woman, Sable, I think her name was, asked me to take the long way, through Halstead. Halstead. That's where the guy had been. I almost pulled over. I remember my hands tightening on the wheel. She didn't say much, just kept looking at her phone. And then the clicking. Faint, but there. Coming from her bag, I wanted to ask, to say something, but I just drove. I drove the long way. I delivered her exactly where she wanted to go. Now, I don't take passengers after dark. Not even if they offer double. It's not fear. Exactly. It's a calculation, a quick assessment of the route, the time, the person. I used to be a yes man. Now, I reroute around almost anything that feels even slightly off. I stick to the brightly lit streets, and I never ever go through Halstead. It was the kind of place everyone passes through. A sprawling suburb built for commuters. Lots of identical houses, perfectly maintained lawns, and those little strip malls that all blur together. I spent most of my evenings driving around there, picking people up and dropping them off after work. It wasn't a bad gig, honestly. Mostly quiet rides with people just wanting to get home. I figured I knew the area pretty well after a while, all the shortcuts and the quickest routes. The rest of the afternoon was normal. A couple of short hops around the business park, a ride for Silas to the train station. He always smelled faintly of cinnamon, weirdly enough, then back into the loop, picking up commuters heading home. I started to convince myself I'd imagined the guy at the corner. It was a busy day and I was tired. App glitches happen. It was probably just a lag, the system thinking I was closer than I was. I pulled into the Starbucks on Elmwood waiting for a pickup. Jen was heading to the mall, standard Friday evening fare. That's when I noticed it. The same blue Honda Civic parked across the street, the one I'd passed maybe 6 times already that day. It hadn't been there 5 minutes ago. I distinctly remember checking my mirrors when I turned onto Elmwood, no blue Civic. Okay, fine. People park, it's a Starbucks. But it was positioned oddly, like perfectly angled to have a clear view of the pickup zone, and the driver wasn't in it. I couldn't see anyone. I checked the app again, triple checking the pickup location. It was right. Jen texted outside now. I waved as she approached, trying to ignore the Civic. She got in, chattering about a sale at Nordstrom. Crazy busy tonight, huh? She said, and I forced a smile. Yeah, Friday traffic. I glanced back at the Civic as I pulled away. Still there, still empty. Maybe someone ran inside for a quick coffee? It seemed unlikely, but it was the only explanation that made any sense. Probably just a weird coincidence. I really needed to get a new air freshener, though. This cinnamon smell was starting to get to me. Jen was gone, dropped off at the mall. I took a breath, trying to shake it off. Just a car. But I didn't take my usual cut-through on Oak Street. Too many blind turns, and that Civic, I went the long way around, sticking to the main roads, even though it added 10 minutes to the next pickup. Old habits, I guess. I always thought Oak Street was quicker. The next fare was Lorne, heading towards the industrial park. He barely spoke, scrolling on his phone the whole time. I glanced in the rearview mirror, then checked my side mirror. Nothing. Good. I pulled into the park. Lorne mumbled a thanks and got out, and there it was. The blue Civic parked across the street, tucked between a delivery van and a chain-link fence. Not in a direct line of sight, but positioned. I started checking my car more carefully after that, locking the doors twice, looking in the back seat before I pulled over. It felt ridiculous, but I couldn't help it. I even started checking the glove compartment, just to make sure nothing was placed there. I found an old registration slip I'd forgotten about, and a breath mint. Nothing else. Then I noticed it. A small plastic army man. Green, maybe 1 inch tall, under the passenger seat. I definitely didn't put that there. I haven't owned an army man since I was a kid. I figured maybe a kid had been in the back recently, dropped it, and I hadn't seen it. It didn't feel right, though. I vacuumed the car religiously. I'd know if a kid left something. I started taking different routes home, varying my end-of-shift time, trying to throw whatever this was off balance. It felt stupid, like playing a game against nothing. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was deliberately watching, not just watching, but knowing where I was going to be. It wasn't random anymore. I kept checking my rearview mirror, not for cars, but for that Civic. It hadn't shown up for 2 nights, which was worse. Absence felt more deliberate. I started ending my shifts at completely random times, even cutting runs short. Lost money, but what was money if I was losing my mind? I even stopped going to Starbucks, too predictable. Last night, I was picking up a passenger near the old textile mill, the one on Bleecker. It was late, almost 2 a.m. Rain slicked the streets, everything blurry with the city glow. I pulled into the loading zone, and that's when I heard it. A scraping sound like metal on concrete coming from inside the mill. The building's been abandoned for years. No security, just boarded-up windows and that chain-link fence. I figured it was probably just the wind, or maybe a homeless person trying to find shelter. I've seen it before. Pavel got in. Quiet guy. Kept looking at his phone. I started to pull away, And the scraping came again, louder this time. Then a thump, like something heavy dropped. I glanced back toward the mill. A shadow flickered in one of the upper windows. Not a person, not quite, too angular. I slammed on the brakes. Pavel nearly went through the windshield. "What the hell?" he said, finally looking up. I thought I saw someone," I stammered. "Thought someone was breaking in." Pavel just shrugged, went back to his phone. "Probably just kids." I drove fast. I dropped him off 1 mile from his destination, mumbled something about a flat tire and needing to get to a shop. I didn't stop driving until I was back near my apartment, heart hammering. I keep thinking about the shadow. It wasn't kids. It was too precise. Someone was inside that mill, and they'd been there the whole time I was waiting. Maybe it was someone squatting, setting up a little camp. Maybe they were watching me, waiting for me to leave. It's probably just a coincidence, but I swear I felt eyes on my back the entire drive home. And this morning, an army man just like before on the passenger seat. Not under the seat. On the seat. I called the non-emergency line. It felt stupid, even as I was doing it. "Someone's been leaving things in my car," I said to the dispatcher. "Little plastic army men, and I think someone's watching me." She sounded bored and asked if I was experiencing a mental health crisis. I told her no, just weirdness. She sent a patrol car. Officer Lorne came. He was a young guy and looked like he hadn't slept. I showed him the army man, explained about the mill, the shadow, and how the ride seemed directed. He listened, mostly nodding, and took notes on a little pad. He went over the car with a flashlight and found nothing. "Probably just a prank, sir," he said. "Kids these days." He asked about the mill. It turns out it's been abandoned for decades. Officially, it's owned by some holding company, but nobody's bothered with it. He ran my plates and my license. Everything came back clean. He asked if I had any enemies, anyone who might want to harass me. I thought about Silas, that guy I'd refused a ride to a few weeks back. He was drunk and aggressive, but that felt small. This felt bigger. He did a quick check of the mill property and called it in. Apparently there'd been complaints about transients, but nothing serious. "We'll increase patrols in the area," he said, handing me a card. "If anything else happens, call us." Then he told me something that stuck with me. The mill used to be a textile factory, but before that, it was a school, a boarding school. It closed down in the 1950s. Something about disciplinary issues. He didn't elaborate. I kept thinking about that school. Maybe it wasn't a stalker. Maybe it was some old grudge, something connected to the history of that place, some relative of a former student finally acting out after all this time. It felt contained somehow. Explainable, but even as I thought it, I found another army man tucked into the sun visor. This one was facing me. I started taking different routes, even if it meant a longer trip for the passenger. Just avoiding that stretch past the mill. It didn't help. They, whoever they were, started anticipating the changes. I'd go north, and there'd be a new drop-off request on the app that somehow looped me back around. It was like they were rerouting me. Then it wasn't just the army men. Things moved in the car. Small things. My phone charger would be on the passenger seat when I swore I'd left it plugged into the dashboard. A water bottle rolling from the back, even when no one was back there. Nothing scary. Not exactly. Just wrong. Like someone had been fiddling. I told Jen about it. My girlfriend. She thought I was stressed, running on fumes. Maybe she was right. I started checking the car obsessively between rides, under the seats, in the glove compartment, even pulling up the floor mats. Finding nothing except once a single playing card, the Queen of Spades face down. I figured it was Pavel. He'd been the only passenger who'd asked specifically about the mill, and he'd had that detached way about him, like he was observing, not participating. I almost called Lorne, but what would I even say? A passenger asked about a mill, and now my car is haunted by misplaced objects. I started staying in hotels when I worked late shifts, just to avoid going home to an unsettlingly rearranged car. And even there, I'd check under the bed every single time. I still do, actually. Not because I think someone's hiding, but because I need to know if something's been placed. I was at a campsite last month, and I found one pressed into the dirt next to my tent. A tiny green army man. It's strange revisiting this now. Honestly, life moved on. I finished school, got a different job. Everything felt normal again after a while. But I found myself thinking about those nights driving for a rideshare company and realized I never actually said the story out loud to anyone. It wasn't a particularly remarkable time, just a way to make some extra money, until it wasn't. And I suppose writing it down feels like the last piece of that falling into place. Another late night, mostly quiet, a few short hops, students heading back to dorms, people stumbling out of bars, the usual. I was aiming for $300, enough to cover rent and still have a little breathing room. Dispatch pinged me around 1:15 a.m. Josie wanted a ride to the north end near the old shipping yards. 15 minutes out. I checked the rear view mirror, adjusting it for the 10th time that night. Still nothing. That smell, it hadn't come back since I aired out the car after that last guy. Vince, I'd convinced myself it was probably just something he'd spilled, some cheap cologne or whatever. I hadn't really noticed it on any of the other fares, just Vince. Josie was waiting on the corner, huddled in a bright pink parka. She looked cold and tired. She practically fell into the back seat without a word. North End, I said, keeping it neutral. She mumbled a thanks and scrolled through her phone. The smell hit me almost immediately. Faint, but definitely there. Metallic, like old pennies. It was stronger this time, not just a whiff. I glanced at Josie in the mirror. She didn't seem to notice my AC was off, windows up. I tried to pinpoint where it was coming from. Under the seats? The vents? Then I saw it, or thought I saw it. A glint of silver tucked into the waistband of her parka. It looked like a handle, small, curved, like a knife, maybe a compact mirror, I couldn't tell. Just a flash, probably just a phone case. But the smell, it was definitely getting stronger, and Josie hadn't moved, just staring at her phone, completely still. I dropped Josie off near the old steel mill district, told myself it was just a weird night. The smell lingered, though, even after I aired the car out, rolling all the windows down despite the cold. I figured I'd just skip a couple requests, drive back towards the busier part of town, maybe grab a coffee, just reset. My phone died as I was pulling onto Willow Creek Parkway. Dead, completely. That was odd. I always keep a charger in the car. Always I checked, of course. It wasn't there. Okay, fine. Annoying, but not the end of the world. I remembered a 24-hour diner a few blocks over. Figured I could use their Wi-Fi to let the app know I was offline. As I turned onto Elm Street, I saw her, standing under a streetlight. Josie. What are the odds? I slowed down, thinking maybe she'd forgotten something. She wasn't looking at me, though. She was talking to someone. A man, tall, wearing a dark coat. I couldn't make out his face. I kept driving, telling myself it was a coincidence. A big city, people end up in the same places. But she didn't hail me, didn't even glance my way. She just finished talking, and the man walked off towards the mill. Then she started walking, same direction, and that smell, it was back in the car, stronger than before, even with the windows down. I took a right, cutting through the industrial park. Thought I could loop back onto the highway, but the gate was down. The security gate, usually open, now chained shut with a thick padlock. A handwritten sign taped to it read, "Closed for maintenance." That's new. I'd driven through here 12 times this month. This wasn't maintenance. It felt deliberate, like a funnel. I put the car in reverse, trying to turn around in the little patch before the gate. The tires spun on the gravel. Damn it. I needed to get out of here. This whole area felt wrong. I tried again, a little gentler this time, and managed to swing it around. As I was pulling back onto the main road, I saw headlights. They were coming fast. It was Josie's car. The pink parka was visible in the driver's seat, and next to her Harvey, he was looking right at me. Not a wave, not a friendly nod, just looking. It wasn't a stare exactly, more like assessing, like they were waiting for something. I floored it. I didn't even think. I just wanted to put distance between us. My phone buzzed, an incoming call. There was no caller ID. I ignored it. I checked the rearview mirror constantly. They weren't following, not exactly. They were matching my speed, approximately 200 yards back, staying on that parallel road. Then I saw something. A glint of metal in Harvey's hand. It wasn't a phone. It was too long, too angular. I couldn't make out what it was, but it caught the streetlight and flashed. It looked like a tool. Maybe he was a mechanic? That's what I told myself. Maybe they needed something from the mill, and I'd just gotten in the middle of it. I pulled over at the next gas station, needing to breathe. My hands were shaking. I fumbled for my charger. The one that had been in the back seat. It was gone. Just gone. I remembered distinctly leaving it plugged into the USB port after my last fare. It had to be. It had to be them. They were messing with me. Trying to what? I didn't know, but I had to get out of here, get back to the city. I drove straight to the state police barracks. I didn't even bother going home. I just needed to report it. It sounded insane even saying it. A missing charger, a creepy couple, a locked gate. But the feeling was real. The tightness in my chest hadn't gone away. The officer, a guy named Vince, was polite enough, but you could tell he thought I was exhausted, maybe a little high from the festival crowd. I told him about Josie, Harvey, the industrial park, and the charger. I even mentioned the way they looked at me, like I was already accounted for. He asked if I thought they'd stolen anything else. I hadn't noticed. Then I remembered the small wooden bird. My grandmother's bird always sat on the dashboard. I checked. It was gone. That was different. That wasn't something just anyone would take. It wasn't valuable, not really, but it meant everything to me. I asked Vince if they had cameras along that stretch of road, near the mill. He said they did, but getting footage pulled took time and paperwork. He took my statement, promised to look into it, and handed me a card. It felt empty, like a gesture. I decided to check my car's dashcam footage. That's when I saw it, a flicker, right as I passed the mill the first time. Something dark, moving above the road. It wasn't a drone, it was too fast, too fluid, and then a shape, long and thin, like a pole, but not metal. Dark wood, maybe. It was there for less than a second, just a shadow against the trees. I rewound it and played it again and again. I thought, suddenly, it wasn't about stealing things. It was about marking me. Like they were claiming territory, that pole. Whatever it was a signal. A way of saying, we saw you. And they'd been watching the whole time. It's been years. 5 or 6, I still drive, but not at night. Not anymore. And definitely not anywhere near that industrial park. People ask if I'm still jumpy, if I think they're still out there. I don't think so. It's not a thinking kind of fear. It's a knowing that some places just shift, and you can't predict when or where. I tried to rationalize it for a long time. I thought maybe it was some weird local prank gone too far, a group of kids with too much time and a messed up sense of humor. The missing stuff, the dashcam flicker, maybe they were marking houses, tagging them somehow, and I just happened to get caught in the middle. It felt organized in a way that amateur vandalism isn't. The worst part isn't the things that disappeared, the phone charger, the air freshener, my grandfather's pocket knife. It's the feeling of being measured, like I was an insect under a glass, and the quiet, that absolute suffocating quiet when they were close. I started carrying a baseball bat, just always under the seat. It felt stupid, but I couldn't shake it. Still do, sometimes. Old habits. I avoid rest stops now, always have. Especially the ones off the highway, the smaller ones, the ones with a lot of trees around them. I was getting a coffee at a Pilot the other day, and the layout, the way the trees blocked the light, just froze me. I stood there, hand hovering over the credit card reader, heart hammering. Just like before, I ended up leaving the coffee and getting back in the car. I still check the rearview mirror 3 times before I pull out, even in broad daylight. It's just what you do.